One of the most interesting stories about the helmet was obtaining Terry Bradshaw's autograph. One of my mother's best friends actually lived near Mr. Bradshaw in Texas in the 1990s. She had seen him numerous times at various local events in the community, and my mother was actually taking a vacation to visit her down in Texas. She was convinced that she could actually get Terry Bradshaw to autograph the helmet if she wrote him a letter during her stay, and that he would actually either come to the house or somehow she would be able to get him to sign it. I was very skeptical. At that point, there was already several signatures on the helmet, but I begrudgingly allowed her to take it with her. She didn't let the helmet out of her sight at any time. She actually carried it onto the airplane, and actually when it was going through the airport scanner, several people who were working at the airport actually said, "There's a football helmet actually in that bag." And she wouldn't let it out of her sight. She took it with her to a restaurant. She was paranoid to leave it in the hotel room where they were staying. So she was a bodyguard for the helmet the entire time. When she got to her friend's home in Texas, she actually wrote a letter to Mr. Bradshaw and filled out an envelope, addressed it in black ink. However, her friend was unsure. He lived on the border of two different towns, and she was unsure which town he actually lived in. So they completed the letter, wrote out the envelope, and again wrote it out in black ink, and left the town blank. They actually went into the post office, the local post office, and the clerk at the post office knew exactly where he lived due to the volume of mail that he had received in the past, and she gave her the town. So my mother actually took out a blue pen and wrote in the town where Mr. Bradshaw lived. So the entire envelope was filled out in black ink, except for the town, which was filled out in blue ink. That's an important part of the story. She actually mailed the letter that day and didn't hear anything for about 3 days. And her and her friends actually went on a trip to the local zoo in Texas. Midway through the day, again on the third day while she was on the trip, her friend's husband actually called her and said that Mr. Bradshaw's secretary had actually called their home. She said that she had actually opened the envelope, which she never does. She said that she never opens Mr. Bradshaw's personal mail. However, because the envelope was written in two different colors of ink, she decided to open it. And by luck, she was working at Mr. Bradshaw's office downtown in the local community. Mr. Bradshaw was supposed to be golfing that day, but it was actually raining, so he was actually at his home. She actually picked up the phone, called Mr. Bradshaw, read him the letter, and he said to bring the helmet into the office, and he would come in and autograph it. However, my mom's pen, the one that all of the signatures were obtained with, was in her purse. But she had left her purse, luckily, at her friend's home. But her friend's husband actually had to dump the purse out and actually got the paint pen out of her purse and took the helmet into the office, and Mr. Bradshaw signed it. I, again, was very skeptical that this would ever happen. And when my mother returned home to Pennsylvania, when she arrived at our home to bring the helmet back, she acted as though she wasn't able to obtain it. And I was basically telling her, "I told you so." So she handed me the bag that the helmet had been in. And as soon as I opened it, the first thing I saw was Terry Bradshaw's signature right there on the front. I couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic. We actually took a picture of myself with the helmet and actually sent it in a thank you card to Mr. Bradshaw down in Texas to thank him for actually autographing the helmet. We were fortunate enough to actually meet Mr. Bradshaw a couple of years later, and we were able to actually thank him in person.